Midterm elections are November 8. All Mainers, including new Mainers, look forward to seeing what the results will be. Why does it even matter for new Mainers to vote?
You know, I think in a place as small as Maine, that local politics is actually one of the most important things that will have a direct impact on their everyday lives and the lives of their children. I'm just sort of really excited about the political future of Black folks and immigrants in Maine.
Voters choose one person over another when they vote. They are also asked to answer ballot questions. These are questions about policy, and the results will impact how things are done in Maine going forward. The ballot questions vary by town and city.
In 2019, there is a group in Portland called Fair Election Portland, part of who I work for. We initiated a ballot. We collected signatures to put clean election and ranked choice on the ballot. Ranked choice got enough vote that the city council was able to pass that through and send it to the people, and now everybody who live in Portland participate through ranked choice voting. Then the clean election, the city said that that change is too big, that they cannot just pass it as an amendment. They have to open up the charter. In the process, it will give the people of Portland an opportunity to have a say on it before it can become an ordinance. Because of that proposal, it was sent, it was sent through the Charter Commission, and the people of Portland elected the commissioners, and then they work on it in 2020, and this is going to be their recommendations that is now put before you to decide whether you wanted it to become the ordinance of Portland or you don't want to. And that's why we have a group of these people here to be able to explain it further, why you should vote for it or why you should vote against it.
A panel of 5 legal and political experts debated 8 questions that are on the ballot in Portland in front of a room full of concerned citizens. Some questions provoked heated debate, others not so much, like the question 1 that wants land acknowledgement.
As Lado said, question 1 would change our charter to add a land acknowledgement. All of us right now, we are standing on what used to be territory of the Abenaki, a Wabanaki nation that inhabited this land for over 13,000 years before European settlement in the 17th century and onward. This small act of recognition will not repair the genocide and ethnic cleansing that gave this land to those of us who now occupy it, but it will recognize the harm that happened and help our community take one step toward repair. Recognition is not reparation entirely, but it's a necessary part of reparation. Land acknowledgements have become a normal part of government business in Canada and are an increasing part of government and other business in the United States. And I hope you all vote for this one so that Portland leads this movement and so that Portland is part of the movement to repair the extraordinary harm that makes all of our lives on this land possible.
Unlike question 1, Portlanders will have a tough choice to vote on question 2, which involves the balance of power in Portland between the mayor and the city manager.
For 99 years, the chief executive of Portland has been an appointed official rather than an official elected by the voters. The appointed official doesn't even have to live in Portland. If you read our current charter, it gives the city council the option to hire someone from anywhere. They don't have to live here. They don't have to share the struggles of the people of Portland. They don't have to understand what day-to-day life in Portland is like. They don't have to have any direct link to the voters of Portland. As a result, many implementation decisions of the policies passed by the city council over the last century have rested with someone who is accountable only to a majority of the city council as opposed to someone who is accountable to a majority of the people of Portland. If you ask me, what do I think of democracy in Portland? My answer is I think it would be a good idea. If you vote for question 2, you'll make our democracy truer, you'll make our democracy stronger, and you'll give power back to citizens. Thank you.
So I am here to oppose as a private citizen question 2. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm from the south side of Chicago. So in Chicago, there's obviously a strong mayor-council format where the mayor is pretty much a very powerful individual. For a city of this size of 68,000 people, I truly don't feel that this city needs an executive mayor like a similar city, like bigger cities, for example, because I truly think if this city were to move forward with question 2, it will literally put into the hands of one person so much power that I don't think this city has ever had before, because now the mayor will have a stronger veto pen in terms of what policy changes might happen with the council. And the mayor already had, veto power over the budget, but just thinking of that type of power when it comes to ordinances that were passed by what will be a 12-member council, which my only concern with that is it has 12 people. So when you combine a strong executive mayor with 12 people, you have the potential to have a 6-6 deadlock on issues that really might matter to this city. And so I think under this current system that we have, is it perfect? No. But I truly think that under a city manager system, it focuses on trying to get results done and leaving the policy decisions to the elected body, which is the city council.
This proposal moves the city in the wrong direction. It immediately sets up a conflict between the mayor, and it creates a new position on the city council with the members of a president of the council. The mayor and the council are almost inevitably going to be in conflict, and you render the city councilors as being potentially, if not in fact, irrelevant, because the city manager is going to be reporting to the mayor, not to the councilors. Despite the shortcomings we have in the current process, the city manager being responsive to all the city councilors makes sure that all issues before the city are treated fairly and come into discussion. If you just have the mayor and the city manager being responsive to the mayor, and lastly, I think another very bad idea, Michael didn't touch on this too much because maybe he considers it a bad idea as well, but it will allow city councilors to remove the mayor if they believe that if they're not happy with the mayor. That means that at any point, people on the city council say, I disagree with the mayor and I think we ought to recall the mayor. That's not democratic, and that's not being responsive to the needs of the city of Portland. That is perpetuating internal politics within the council that I think will be divisive and destructive.
Big supporter of this question. So an example of how this could affect us is we passed rent control in 2020. And what this meant is our rents need to get stayed locked in. Our landlord can't just raise our rents however they want. They have to raise them a certain amount. They need to let us know why. My downstairs neighbor moved in, and we found out that his previous neighbor had been paying like $500 less than him. So the landlord had illegally raised his rent up. And he's like, who should I talk to about this? I'm like, well, if you go talk to the city about this, they're going to tell the landlord that you said that your rent got raised illegally. And next year, your lease is going to not get renewed. And this is because the city is not proactively telling people, telling landlords, telling tenants, hey, you're not supposed to raise rent. They will go ticket cars. They will go, kick out homeless people out of the park. But our city manager tells the staff, here's what I want you to do. And they don't want to enforce the laws that are going to protect us. And that's like a political decision. But we can't do anything about it, right? Because the city manager is not elected. The city manager is going to stay in office, and there's nothing we can do about it. And under question 2, what we'd be able to do is say, hey, here's the mayor. And if the mayor is not telling the staff to do their job like we want them to do, that mayor's got to go. And we can do that. City council can do that. It's very important to not pretend that, just because this person is running staff, it's not a political decision. If they're telling people not to do their jobs because they are friends of the landlords, that should not be allowed, and that person should get kicked out of office. So this will bring accountability to City Hall, and it'll make sure that these social services that have dried up get to stay, because right now our city is not spending any money on social support. It's spending money on, paying money to developers to make, huge skyscrapers.
Question 3 concerns clean elections. What is meant by clean elections, anyhow?
Clean election means the money comes from the people. So the city, if you declare that you wanted to run for public office, then the city will allocate funding based on how many signatures you are able to collect. $5 contributions. That money do not go directly to you. It go to the city coffin. And then the city will allocate funding to your campaign, and then you will be able to run your campaign. That is why it's called clean election.
Michael Kebede, one of the panelists, spoke in favor of question 4, which concerns ranked choice voting. What is ranked choice voting, and how does it affect the community?
The way ranked choice voting works is you rank your candidates in order that you want them. And if you don't like all of the candidates, you just rank 1 or 2 or the ones that you like. And so there is a block of voters in Portland, as in most cities, who are, let's say, very conservative and who have a very specific type of candidate that they'll support. And they won't support the candidate that a popular majority of the city supports. That happened on the Charter Commission, where we had 4 people run for seats that were citywide. 30 people run for 4 seats. Of those 30 people, after the first round of voting, in third place was a Republican guy who owns a restaurant and is popular among 20 or 15% of the city. He came in third after the first round. After the second and third and fourth votes were tallied, someone who got only 4% in the initial tally came up and became one of the 4 winners of the Charter Commission. And so these hardcore supporters of Mr. Conservative did not get their candidate in office. Essentially what that meant was part of the Charter Commission did not look like the city.
The discussion around question 5 was charged. Should the City Council allow the school board to decide on the annual school budget? Xavier Botana, who has been the Portland School Superintendent for 7 years, had a lot to say about this.
I've seen year after year how the elected board members, people that the community elected because of their commitment to making our schools better, spend hours and hours and hours working on the budget, understanding what it means to do something or not do something, and then have a finalized budget that they bring before the city council. And the city council is in a position where they're able to say, we understand that all of those things are good and they're important, but we're not willing to increase taxes by as much as you say is necessary, and therefore send the school board back to figure out what it is that they're not going to do, which is a detriment ultimately to the quality of education that we're able to provide to our students.
Michael Kebede explains why this ballot question is crucial to the communities of color.
8% of Portland is black. Over 34% of Portland schools are black. Around half of Portland schools are students of color. From walking around in Portland, you know that half of Portland is not people of color. The funding for schools comes from property taxes and from state money, about half and half. That means that the schools are funded by people who own property, and an overwhelming majority of those people are people of European descent. It's good to live comfortably, but it's good to share your wealth. And that's the crux, I think, one of the main objections to this question, which it will lead to higher property taxes. Also, the same voters who elect the city council elect the school board. The back and forth that goes on right now between the school board and city council wastes hundreds of hours of people like the superintendent and his staff. Those are very expensive hours. Those hours should be spent educating our kids. I see a principal over there, Deering High principal. I'm sure he spent some time focusing on how to persuade the city council to support our schools. That should not happen. The school board should be the school board. And the school board, as an elected body, should not be micromanaged by the city council.
I am the chair of the Education Committee in the legislature. Almost half the state budget goes to education. If the legislature came to me in the Education Committee and said, we want you to decide what to spend on education in the state of Maine, and then we're going to send it out to voters to vote on. But we're not asking you about health care, economic development, homelessness, or anything else in the state of Maine. You would sit here and you'd say to me, that's crazy. You can't put together a state budget and not take into consideration all the other things and other priorities that are facing the state. What this proposal is doing is saying education and the school committee is going to be able to make those decisions, and everything else that is a priority important in the city, public safety, parks, homelessness, healthcare, are not considered in the same discussion. That is a recipe for the city to move in the wrong direction, and that's why this proposal not only is questioned legally, but it's not a good proposal for the city in terms of us developing an integrated budget to address all the needs in the city.
Yeah, I will agree with the superintendent because I think we share, coming from a former state in Illinois, the scheme here is kind of interesting, though, in comparison to how, like, Chicago Public Schools may do it, but I guess in Portland it is what it is. But I come at this from a taxpayer perspective. Well, I'm coming at it from 2 points. So one is a property tax perspective. As I said before, I am a renter. So I haven't been given the why as a citizen as to why the scheme needs to change in Portland. Not saying it's perfect, not saying that, you know, it might meet the needs of what the school board might need, but my concern is that if the city moves forward with fiscal autonomy, what the voters do, what will that mean for property taxes? Will that mean every year that voters, and to be fair, voters will ultimately have a check on whether they want the school budget to pass or not. So I understand that. But the question becomes, will there be additional property taxes on top of what the city might offer in terms of property taxes? The second point is that, you know, just working up in the legislature, we finally got to 55% for education cost in this state. So meaning that the state of Maine, via referendum, supported 55% of the cost coming from the state of Maine. And we finally got to that in the last budget. So the goal of that was to keep property taxes down throughout the state. Now, is it probably going to? That's the hope that it does. And I've realized that the formula and the valuation of things might be different based on municipality. But I just feel like if the state of Maine already has met that obligation, then I think school districts should try their best to keep property taxes low, whether that's coming from the municipality or that's coming from the school board.
Ballot question 6 concerns Peaks Island Council.
The Peaks Island has a city council, but that council is advisory to the city of Portland because Peaks Island is part of Portland.
The simple act of lifting this council, which is a council created to advise the city council on Peaks Island issues, the simple act of lifting that into the charter, which is a more permanent document than the Code of Ordinances, is intended to make islanders feel more recognized, more seen, and more valued.
And question 8 is about the city to form an independent ethics commission.
What the charter reform question 8 would do is it would require an ethical code with certain criteria. It would also require the creation of a board of ethics or an ethics commission. An ethics code is one thing, but applying an ethics code is another. And we cannot always trust public officials to apply ethical rules to themselves, which is why it's necessary to create an impartial board of people who are responsible for receiving complaints, every type of ethical complaint, assessing and analyzing these complaints, and taking any appropriate action.
They both provoked no discussion, while ballot question 7 will resonate with New Mainers. It concerns creating a new civilian police review board. How would this differ from current practice?
The current police oversight board does not really have power to investigate the police department. And the current Police Oversight Board takes all of its recommendations and sends them to the city manager. The city manager, as we all know, is not chosen by the people. The city manager is appointed by the council. Under this new system that we're proposing in question 7, the Police Oversight Board will be able to investigate violations of civil rights and civil liberties by police officers and generate recommendations to the city council, which is the voice of the people.
I will concede that we probably do need some updates in terms of a board, but my general concern personally is that the council was the one that created the PCRS. And I've been wondering why it needs to go into the charter, because my concern is that if it were to go into charter and there needs to be changes to our board, that means the likelihood of asking the voters again, hey, do you want to change something on the PCRS that the council could have changed? I think that's going to be too cumbersome. I do think that the PCRS as a whole was created by council, and I do think that it needs to stay created by council and allow the council to amend us as they see fit.
In addition to the 8 ballot questions, there will be also others to vote for. What are they?
The people initiative are numbered in letters A, B, C, D, E. And the first one, an A, is to regulate short-term rental. That basically Airbnbs of the world, that the people who brought this forward wanted to ensure that there's a limit into how many of those short-term rental exist in the city of Portland. I think right now it's 400. Probably they want to take it down. Question B is basically, it's almost the same thing. And C, an act to protect tenants in Portland. I think that has to do with evicting a tenant and how much notice need to be put in place before they can do that. And question D, basically to an act to eliminate the sub-minimum wage. That is to increase the minimum wage. Question E is an act to restrict cruise ships in order to reduce congestion and pollution. That is basically limiting how many crews will come to Portland in a given year.
You know, what we did is we looked through and we said, where is our city council not acting? And we've asked them to act and they're not acting, and you know, maybe that's because they're afraid to, because there's a lot of money that will fight them. So what we wanted to do is we said, okay, we need to make sure that people get paid enough. So we wrote the short term, we wrote the minimum wage question. Then we said, how can we return some housing back to the market? Because it's so hard to find an apartment right now. And city council said they wanted to do this and then they haven't done it. So we said, we'll do it. And so we wrote the short-term rental one, and then a lot of us are in buildings where, you know, our landlords are taking advantage of us. They are raising the rent and threatening to kick us out, and we don't have anywhere to go. So we wrote the tenant protections question, and together, you know, we wanted to create this package that will make Portland, you know, easier to live in, more affordable.
Has the discussion changed any minds of voters?
Yeah, after the conversation, I definitely think the first question on adding the native lands to the preamble of the Charter Commission is incredibly important, and the city should definitely move forward there. When it comes to some of the short-term rental questions, I do have concern about how some of those questions have been vetted by various different stakeholders in the community. And I tend to think I will vote against those, but try to hold my councilors and city councilors more accountable to regulating and better understanding the impact of short-term rentals on the city. We have many communities that are trying to find housing, and that's an incredibly difficult feat right now. And we need to find ways to improve the housing stock here in Portland. Last but not least, when it comes to the direct budget approval by the school committee. I'm still kind of torn. I do see the importance that we have elected school committee members to represent us and best benefit kids in our city. But I also do think that the city council has a sort of a wider view of what our budgetary priorities should be, and sometimes a little bit of back and forth and idea sharing between the council and the school committee could be important. So I'm still a little torn, but I'm starting to lean towards voting against that measure.
Something all panelists agree on is that it's important for all U.S. citizens to vote.
If the Charter Commission's recommendations do not pass, I think that's also okay because it is democratic. All of us have the right to vote, and I will ask each and every person to come out and vote on Tuesday the 8th, whether you are against what's on the ballot or for. It does not matter. That's the right that you have as a voter. And those who are eligible to vote, who are citizens of the United States, can go out and vote.
I think a common misconception is that, the presidential elections are the one that really matters, but I think that's a big mistake because it's elections like this, the ones that happen in between presidential elections, really matter because we have 186 seats up in the state legislature right now, plus we have the governorship open, and that could potentially change dramatically if we don't remind people that the issues that you care about are on the line. Literally, we're about to vote next week as a people, and my hope is that the direction of the state continues to move forward and not backwards. But my hope is that people like you all have voted or will turn out to vote. No matter what you vote for the local questions, no matter what you vote for the state, just vote. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to look on the TV and you see people that are elected that you might not agree with, I'm strongly agreeing with based on who they are as a people, because our democracy is under threat right now. And you don't want to make that mistake and have to wait another 2 years to go vote them out. So I just think you need to vote.
As an educator, I urge people to exercise a hard-won right, which is the right to vote, and particularly to my young friends in the audience, if you haven't voted yet, please do, and bring another young person with you to vote, because this is absolutely an incredibly important right that none of us should take for granted, because there are lots of forces that are working day after day after day to take that right away. So make sure that you get out, make sure that you bring a friend or bring a group of friends, and that you all vote.
When I was first elected to the state senate, I won by 10 votes in Portland. I was first Democrat elected in that Senate district. At that time, the state Senate was tied 17-17-1. There's 17 Democrats, 17 Republicans, and 1 independent. And by 10 votes, the state Senate went to 18 Democrats, 16 Republicans, and 1 independent. So to me, it's been incredibly clear the importance of everybody voting, and every vote does make a difference. We had a vote a number of years ago here in the city of Portland for the school committee. It ended in a tie. And we had to have another vote to sort out where it was going to go. But when people say, oh, my vote doesn't matter I get out to vote, I can say with absolute certainty that every vote does matter. And in case, again, when I first got elected to the Senate, I had 300 people come up to me in the next month and say they were the final 10 votes that put me over the top. Everybody took credit for it, but it does make a difference.
All these things, if they were to pass, the Portland of tomorrow is going to be different from the Portland of yesterday.